I opened my eyes to stare into deep black eyes a few meters away. Fascinated eyes, eyes of otherness. There was no fear, none at all. We watched in mutual astonishment at the incredibility of our being. We existed at this moment in time, and the gulf between our histories and separate evolution was gone. Behind us soared steep banks of sand and vertical orange sandstone cliffs. It was just on dawn. There was no thought, nothing but the startling desire to hang on to a connection that we knew could not last, holding on to our harmony for yet another unlikely moment.
The words you just heard open this book, A Sense of Wonder by conservationist and ecologist Haydn Washington, an Australian dude. Now, I came across this book out of nowhere. I just caught my eye in the corner of a second-hand bookshop, and I picked it up, flicked through it, and it was kind of exactly what I was looking for that day. Back to the original quote that I read at the start off this book, these words describe an inexplicable experience that Washington had, and really kick-started this revolution inside of him, thinking about wonder for the natural world. Now, this book that came out of this experience, in a way, opens up a variety of different tangents and ideas, but I'm just going to discuss 4 key ones today, kind of the 4 key ideas that Washington brings forward in this book. A good way to look at it would be the what, the why, and the how of wonder. Now, I think it's pretty important to start with the what, and that is, what actually is wonder? After that, I'll look at the kind of 2 whys, the why wonder is important and why do we tend to lose it, especially as we grow up. And the third point, and probably the most important point, is how do we get this wonder back? Definitions. What actually is wonder? I think the whole point of it, as Washington brings up, is that it's hard to explain, because at its core, its key quality is that it's a personal thing. It's not something that we can easily define or reduce. It's different for every person. But I guess another quality that stems from that is, yes, it's different from every person, but every person can experience it. It doesn't matter your worldview. You don't have to be Buddhist or Christian or whatever to feel this sense of wonder. You could even be a pure physicalist, someone that doesn't really believe in any sense of spirituality, and still experience wonder. Now, where you think this might come from might differ to other people, but the fact is you do still experience it. Alright, a couple more quick points before I go on trying to describe the indescribable for too long. 2 more qualities of wonder that Washington brings up is that wonder is also childlike. At least that's the best word we've got for it. It's a return to this abstract innocence. Alongside this is the idea that wonder also shines through in epiphanies. Even those people who seem to live on this heightened experience, this higher plane of wonder and awe at the natural world, also seem to have these distinct moments where it all comes together. It's interesting because it seems like we don't really have any control over these moments. They seem to happen randomly. Like Washington's experience at the start of the book. He just woke up. A normal day out in nature, and he woke up and locked eyes with an animal. Why then? This is also the beauty of wonder. We can't quite put our finger on it in terms of the experience, but also in terms of the timing. Very quickly before we move on, if all of this sounds foreign to you, if it all sounds like spiritual claptrap, I've got a couple rebuttals to that. The first one is, maybe you just haven't experienced anything quite like that yet. I think I'm probably in this boat. I've experienced times where I've felt this wonder, but nothing quite like the experience that Washington had. Nothing truly indescribable yet, I hope. The other point is, maybe you've just forgotten, or wanted to forget. Maybe you have experienced these moments in the past, especially in your childhood, but have kind of pushed them away because of your perspective. I might be right or wrong, but challenge this assumption you may have about this wonder being some silly idea. People do experience these things and they can't quite describe them, so there must be something to it. So what actually justifies this wonder? Why should we want to get it back? Why does it matter at all? Well, the key point that Haydn Washington brings up in the book is that we tend to want to keep anything that we feel wonder about. Putting aside the natural world, if you bring up the idea of just art or music, we want to keep this stuff that makes us feel these feelings, this sense of wonder and awe. The things that we feel wonder about, we want to preserve naturally. And Washington says, and I think I agree, that there's nothing wrong with this. If we have this deep love and wonder for something and we want to preserve it, what is the fault in that? It feels pretty natural. Very rarely would people feel a sense of wonder towards something wicked, would they? It's almost always something natural or pure or good. Another point, a more practical point in order to keep this sense of wonder, is that many people do feel empty and stuck. In the modern world, the depression rates are through the roof. People are not very happy a lot of the time, especially those living in cities and going through the monotony of day-to-day life. In nature, there is a solution, as Washington says. After all, we've got nothing to lose. By looking to get this wonder back or maintain this feeling, we're not actually losing anything. All we have is to gain. Following on from this point is that the natural world, nature, it doesn't make us bad people ever, really. By actually connecting with it and wondering about it, it makes us more patient, it makes us more kind and forgiving and gives us a wider perspective. Nature slows us down, which I think for everyone is a good thing to be doing at the moment. Everything in 2026 is so fast. It's always to the next thing, to the next thing. I've had to learn this myself. Slowing down is one of the best things you can really do. Otherwise, you just get swept up. Now, I won't go on for any longer because I think it's fairly obvious why we should try to get at least some of this wonder back. It's only good. There's no negative from this. By going and trying to get back your wonder, it's not just going off with the fairies and running away from life's problems. It's doing life better. Why do we actually lose it in the first place? Where does this wonder go? Washington seems to think that we have this wonder ingrained in us as children, but as we grow up, especially throughout teenage years, we tend to drift away from it. It tends to go away. There are three main reasons for this, I think, that Washington brings up in the book, and I've kind of put it into three distinct categories, but they're all kind of linked. The first one is distractions. I think everyone wants to get off their phones, and we all know how much of a distraction that is. Modern life as a whole is one big distraction after another. It's always the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Our attention spans are lowering. We're becoming less patient. All of these distractions force us to stick in this modern bubble rather than looking at the wider picture. The second point is conformity. This particularly matters for kids going through high school, say. Washington draws on his own experience here. He went to a Steiner school and ended up being fostered in this idea of wonder, and that's why he's still got such a strong sense of it. But for many of us, we go to school and this wonder, this connection with the natural world just isn't cool. It isn't what people do. You're seen as being off with the fairies or being a tree hugger or something of the like. The same thing happens when you're an adult, to an extent. Alongside this, any sense of outdoor education as well often is quite goal-based. It's often we're going to this spot or we're trying to develop this skill rather than just sitting. This is another form of conformity because we then see our relationship with the natural world as being more of an activity rather than just a way of life in a way. Overarching all of this is the consumerist capitalist culture, I guess. You could go into a whole rant about the issues with those two things, but at its core, consumerism doesn't want us to wonder. It wants us to be distracted and on to the next thing. It doesn't want us to slow down and connect with the natural world, because how can it profit from it? Now, the last point, which is very much linked to the other two, is the idea of othering. It's the dualistic vision that I discussed in my last video. This us and them of nature. This becomes more distinct as we get older. We're told this and society naturally thinks this. So as we grow up and are around this, we become part of it. We see nature as separate. It's interesting because in the modern world, science and art are seen as two different poles, almost. Whereas one of the most significant scientific thinkers of all time, Leonardo da Vinci, used to think science and art were inextricably linked. They were one and the same in a way. Whereas now we have our reductionist scientific method view, and then we have our off with the fairies hippie artsy view. Those things are so far apart in the cultural perception. This only decreases our sense of wonder because we're being told by everyone that to be rational we must think in this certain way. We must think sensibly, we must think in a reductionist way, breaking things down and ordering them in the Western way we do things. Wonder doesn't really fit in here. It's seen as something spiritual, something weird, something you can't really reduce to anything, and so we'll just leave it over there. It can't be measured. I think most people see Albert Einstein as a pretty scientific man. He would probably be pushing it back against a lot of the things I'm saying to advocate for a more scientific, sensible view. But these are his words. What I see in nature is a magnificent structure that we can comprehend only very imperfectly, and that must fill a thinking person with a feeling of humility. This is a genuinely religious feeling that has nothing to do with mysticism. Even Einstein says, this feeling of wonder and awe at the natural world isn't just mystical, off with the fairies kind of talk. It's a genuinely religious feeling. He doesn't downplay that. He doesn't define it because he can't, none of us can, but it's there and it does matter. Now, the point still stands, what are we going to do about it? We kind of know what wonder is. We kind of know why it's important and why we lose it. But how do we actually get it back? I think all of us want to have a better connection with the natural world and have more of these amazing experiences. But how do we actually do it? Well, I think, as usual, it's important to split things into mental behaviours or mindset shifts and actual practical actions. Some of these that I'm about to give you are Washington's, some of them are mine, most of them are kind of like a mixture of the two. To start, the mental behaviours, or the shifts in mindset that we can have. The first one is obvious, and it's to challenge our dualistic othering. I discussed the same idea in The Trouble with Wilderness. Challenge this idea of us and nature as separate things. Think more holistically, more broadly. Realise that we have quite a dependence on the natural world. We're not wholly separate from it. We need it. Erich Fromm, a guy that Washington talks about multiple times in the book, has a nice little phrase. He says we got to change our view from have to be. From have to be, just 4 words, but it perfectly encapsulates this shift in mental behaviour that we kind of got to have for the natural world. Rather than possessing it and having stuff as well, be, live, enjoy. I think these are pretty universal things that most people want to do, and it's hard to argue against it. It's just a much better, healthier life to live, having stuff and having possessions to being. The final, more mental thing that I want to encourage people to do is when you're feeling that urge of conformity, especially if you're in high school or in college or even as an adult, if you're feeling that peer pressure to fit in, don't fall into it. Nature just is cool. Wonder is cool. For those who make fun of you or make you feel silly about it, they're missing out on something that you can't even describe how good it is. Think about it that way. And realize as well that there are whole communities of people that you will find that think in this same way. And that the people who might be making fun of you one day will probably wake up and realize that you're onto something one day as well. Don't conform just because people are telling you to. Listen to nature just as much. It's probably telling you something different and probably something a lot more valuable and healthy. Onto the more practical things that we can actually do to change in our lives and that I'm going to tell you to do. The first one is to directly address this idea of distractions that I mentioned before. Now, put simply, get off your fucking phone. Just, everyone's telling you to do this. You're probably telling yourself to do this. I'm telling myself to do this. I'm terrible at this. But you need to do it. Even just in simple ways. If you're going down to the end of the road and back for a walk, leave your phone on your desk. You're not going to die. You're not going to miss anything. You're going to be absolutely fine, and you're going to get so much more from it. Just trust me. Very closely linked to this is you need to prioritize contemplation. Prioritize thinking and space. This might even mean getting into your Google Calendar or your written calendar and just putting aside half an hour once a week to just sit and think and be outside. Trust me, it does absolute wonders. And even if you don't get anything practical from it, it just de-stresses you. And that's just already such a great and valuable thing. The key idea here is to let your days breathe. Put gaps in between things. Don't go from one thing to the other thing all the friggin' time. Leave some space in there to think and contemplate, especially outside. The next practical action might be the craziest one, and it's also probably the most impactful, at least has been for me. And this is the idea of nature journaling. Now, I've just seen most of you recoil and roll your eyes, but seriously, just do it. I did this the other day. I hadn't done it in a while, but I just went out into my backyard under a tree, little piece of scrap paper that big. 15 minutes, no phone, set a timer on my phone, put it aside, and just wrote all the things I wondered about the tree next to me. It is so good for you. Trust me. There are plenty of good resources online, but really simply, the best way to do it is get yourself comfortable, put a timer on for at least 10 minutes, ideally 15-20 minutes, and just look at one plant. Write down as many things as you can about that plant. Write down questions. Doesn't matter if you can answer them or not, or that you bother to answer them later down the line, but just ask them. Wonder. Now, the final action, and arguably the most important one, along with the contemplation and nature journaling. Find what works for you. Find what you get wonder from. For everyone, it's pretty different. For me, it's probably the night sky. It terrifies me, but it's also just insane. Just this sense of awe and amazement at the sky. I need to do that more and foster that feeling of wonder. I know people that for them it's probably fungi and looking at the different colours of fungi in the forest and just spending hours in just the same little segment of track looking at all the different parts. That's fine too. Find what works for you, because at its core, wonder is an intensely personal thing. Yes, we collectively share the feelings and experience in a way, but how we go about doing that is very, very different. Very, very finally, because partly I've yapped on for too long and also it's just started raining. So, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share all those YouTubey things. I want to keep making stuff like this, quite simply. I love talking about it. So, yeah, especially comment. If you've got any interesting ideas or interpretations, or you just flat out disagree and think I'm talking crap, please put it down there. I want to talk about it more. I could talk about this all day long. Make sure you encourage people around you. Encourage them to foster their sense of wonder and to stay connected to the natural world. Encourage them to think, because that's ultimately the most important thing you can do. I should head off before everything gets soaked, but thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. But yes, go wonder. Go do something and tell each other about it. See you later.